So hello all. First of all, I welcome you into this Power T&D workshop. The central idea of organizing this workshop was that the power sector is a sector which has kind of gained the prominence in terms of stock market participation has been happening into this sector, but outlook is somewhere missing. That we have done a bit good. I mean, this sector has done well, but what from now on? That is not clear. So kind of take stock of things. Where are we? And we try to dig out some case studies which would be relevant for current participants like you. Also, the idea of this webinar is to give you a perspective of the whole structure. So anyone who is a beginner into this sector, this webinar is for him actually, to understand the whole history and present and a kind of a futuristic outlook of the sector. So let's begin with the content part. So we'll first cover overview of the power sector value chain. Then we look at it from a financial analyst angle, that what has happened in last 10 years and how the money has flown to different segments, sub-segment, different types of participants, and how the money flow has been, what has been the trend in the past. Because as Mark Twain has said that the history doesn't repeat itself, but it mostly rhymes. So we need to find those rhythm. We need to find those structures, those patterns, because ultimately investing is all about pattern recognition, and that doing it early always makes you wiser and wealthier. So we are trying to follow the money trail, and then we'll dig out on why transmission is our focus area and why this workshop is more centered towards transmission. And then we'll take out 4 case studies, most of which are live, and then we'll followed by a Q&A, which we will be trying to answer your queries based on this, whatever we have discussed. My name is Amitabh Vatsya. I run a YouTube channel called Sadhan Stocks, and I've been a full-time investor for last 4-5 years. And what's relevant today is that I had worked in power sector for 4 years as a project finance analyst in ICICI Bank in 2011 to 2015. And so that was the period where I learned the power financing, renewable financing, and everything was in a nascent stage. So I had the opportunity of seeing it very closely when this whole sector was shaping up. And my background is of BTech in electrical and electronics engineering from BIT Mesra. That also helps today. And also I've done MBA from IIM Mumbai and had worked in corporate into financing roles. Like I worked with L&T Infra Finance as a debt capital market guy, and then worked on structured financing into Island FS as well as Hero FinCorp. And I had a 2 years experience of industry into Tata Motors. There I was working as an electrical engineer. So that's my brief background. So let's move down to the industry structure of power sector. So basically there are a couple of blocks which are visible on the screen. So there are the central piece is more important. The central you will see power generation, power transmission, and power distribution. So first of all, we need to understand that power sector is a regulated sector, and the role of regulator is of paramount. So here we have certain regulators like CERC, the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, and there are state ERCs. So it is basically a concurrent list item. Electricity comes under a purview of state as well as central entities. So CERC is the central nodal and regulator, and the state ERCs, respective state ERCs, take care of their local thing. So if we structurally look at it, then power generation is basically least to do with the state matter. Here only CERC rules generally prevails. Generally CERC is dominant in power generation. In power transmission, it is CERC, and PGCIL is the nodal agency, which is again a central unit. It is not a state subject. Generally, it is more of the power transmission. Whatever we are going to talk about more, it would be under the preview of PGCIL and the CERC, because it's a more of a central topic. But when we talk about distribution, it is largely a state subject. So distribution, we kind of we choose not to invest into distribution, because for you to make good bucks into distribution, you need to understand the state dynamics of respective state, respective player who are dominant into which state and all. So we rather choose to work as a understand this sector from a national perspective. So that's why we choose to look into power transmission, because we understand one regulator operates it, and that's why this is the control variables are very less in power transmission and in power generation also. Then there are companies, there are power ancillaries who are participant into the power value chain, which we'll talk about, which support generation, transmission, and distribution. So basically, this three legs, actually, initially it was generally called power sector, and there was no three legs were there. It was bundled. So unbundling happened in 1990s, because when generation guy has to look at the distribution part also, so the focus was not there. So, and in during till 1990s, when India was growing, before Manmohan Singh and PV Narasimha Rao government came, before that the things were very cozy, and everything was so bureaucratic that all three units were taken care by state and central also. So, but central agencies were created during the time, like NTPC, which was the biggest power generator in the country. It was set out in somewhere in 50s, 60s. So some institution building happened in 50s, 60s, like NTPC, NHPC, National Hydro Power Company. So these two were the parental organization of this sector, so to say, on the generation side. If we have to choose between the parentage of NTPC versus NHPC, then I would choose with the NTPC, because NTPC is a very balanced and very good work culture and very sorted developer power generator. And NHPC has been the distant cousin of NTPC and not so managed well. And so whenever I see personally that NHPC background comes in, then there are chances of crony capitalism and those things goes up. And there are certain other institutions like SJVN, that Satluj Jal Vikas Nigam Limited, and all those institutions were established before 1990s. But 1990s may what happened, that government said that no, even every state has to choose that there has to be three entity. One would be looking at generation, other would be looking at transmission, and the third one would be looking at the distribution. So basically, if you look at the state hierarchy, then state in state, the most powerful thing is distribution. State look after the distribution. So state discoms are more powerful state-wise in structurally, and some of them have transmission companies. Like Delhi has a Delhi Transcom. So Delhi has a separate transmission company, but many states have a very weak hand into transmission. They don't do much into transmission. Most of the thing at transmission is handled by PGCIL. This is Power Grid, and they are the Karta Dharta of transmission sector, so to say. And these guys are supported by a power financing ecosystem, which is basically helping them raise capital for generation, transmission, and distribution companies. So in this list, I would put first of all Power Finance Corporation, which is the biggest of all, which has, and then REC, Rural Energy Electrification Company. So REC and PFC, they were like the sister companies for a long time, but later on they merged in last 5 years. So REC PFC is now one entity. I mean, they are owned by the same entities. Any which way, they were mostly 75% owned by Government of India, indirectly or directly. But now they are united into one. There is another small entity called IREDA, which is Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency, which looks after the growth of renewable energy. And this renewable energy came into picture quite late in 2000, I think 2005 or that was a time when Ministry of New and Renewable Energy was created. So everything was falling under Ministry of Power before this. But 2000, early 2000, this carve out was done, and henceforth the schemes like Jawaharlal Nehru Solar Mission, National Solar Mission, was propagated by then Congress Minister. And that time, this was 2010 onwards, the solar started. But before that, the wind has its turn. I will talk about that. But this has been the power financing side, and this was supported by IREDAs of the world, and the PFC RECs has this agenda that they need to support this ecosystem. But largely, PFC and REC has been supporting the weaker hands into power distribution sector. Like many state discoms, they were not doing well, like Bihar state discoms or AP discoms were not really that legit in terms of the financing muscle power was lacking. So they used to get fund from PFC at a softer loan rate. And that's how this whole distribution thing was happening into through PFC and REC. So their role was very critical into funding and for the whole ecosystem funding. And later on, this power exchanges were born. It's a new ideas basically where what happened that when we got a vibrant generation companies and vibrant distribution companies, and there was a kind of a power system was evolving. That time there was a need for a power exchange. The way stock market has evolved, so stock exchanges were born. Likewise, power exchanges were born, IEX, and there was another one. So there are two power exchanges in India operating right now. So this is the overall structure. So let's now go into the generation a bit deeper, because generation is it's more like if you have heard of most of you understand the Hindu mythology of Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. So Brahma being the generator. So generation companies are the genesis of this power sector. So let's first talk about the generator, and generations involves kind of a two structure. One is the thermal part. So thermal has been the majority. It has been 100%, at least 95%. If we look at 20 years back, then 95% was thermal, and 5 to 10% was this small hydro plants, and even a bigger hydro. So hydro and thermal was a mix, 90 to 10 for a good long 50, 60 years. And NTPC was ruling the roost because they were commanding 90%, 80% of that 90%. So these were early days, and BHEL was supporting NTPC. So BHEL was in the background of NTPC, giving them the turbines for thermal generation. But things changed when new energies started coming in, and right now the target is to reduce the thermal to around 50% of overall mix. At capacity wise, I'm saying. So there are two things which I would like you to know. That one is the capacity. Like if we today bifurcate the whole power sector, then this 100 would be divided into 55 odd into thermal side and 45 odd into non-thermal side. But 55 odd thermal power generates works at a very good plant load factor, which is the power. If it is marked as 100 megawatt, it will be available for 85% of the time. So it will generate 85 megawatt for practical reason. But on the other hand, all the renewable energy, including hydro, wind, everybody else has a variable plant load factor. Nobody knows what kind of wind will flow and wind PLF, what kind of generation would be happening in the wind turbines. Likewise, in solar, nobody can predict whether sun god will appear today or not. So those 45% has been effectively at a plant load factor of 25-30%, 25%, because only the hydro has a high utilization plant load factor in terms of 40, 35 plus 40%, because 6 months we have monsoon and all those things. So rivers, so the hydro plants which have storage into it. So there are two types of hydro. One is the run on river, ROR, where there is no storage. It's just dependent on the river flow. So those have very low PLF, but the storage, if you build up a storage and then you do generate hydro power plant, those power plants still have a higher 50% kind of PLF. But overall, the mix of hydro put together would be 30-35% odd. And if you talk about the wind and others, then the PLFs are 20 to 25, wind plus solar put together. So effectively, this 45% of this revenue of this mix of power mix is operating at 30% at best PLF. So effectively, the power which you are getting in your home is effectively 70% made of thermal energy and 30% made of renewable energy. I mean, I'm just taking a very ballpark range. So thermal, we are still dependent on thermal. Many people say that thermal is a written off story. That's not the case. With all due respect to thermal, let's move to the other side, which is solar and wind, where lots of buck have moved. So let's look at the chart here. So overall, if we start with FY 2017 to FY 25, on the side you can see that solar, which is on the yellow, its generation has moved from 5 gigawatt, 5,000 megawatt is 5 gigawatt in 2017 to 25 gigawatt. So kind of 5x in last 10 years. And next year, 2026, the expectations as per MNRE and the JNK research is that it will reach the 30 gigawatt counter. But to give you a background where the story is going to be and where it should be. So if you have heard of a 500 gigawatt renewable energy target, if that's the case, if a country wants to reach to 500 gigawatt, then they need to have a 50 gigawatt of strike rate every year. So still we are at 30, majority of it is coming from solar. So next year 30 gigawatt will be solar, and let's see other part also. So 30 will be taken care by solar next year, and balance 20 will be looking at other alternative options like wind. So windmill, let's see how the game has played so far. So, but before we go to wind, let's cover the solar part. So you can see that these graphs, these are a growing line. So if we draw a trend line, it would be 45 degree slope. It has been rising every year, except barring a few years when FY19 the installation was lower than 18. But the growth above 0% growth was almost there in all years except two. So it is a growing pie. But if we look at wind, then you would see the towers were quite early. Like FY17 itself, there was a 5 gigawatt, more than 5 gigawatt. And FY25, it is 4 gigawatt. So the slope has been slightly distorted into wind. So there is a reason behind it. So I'll just sum it up the wind story for you guys. So wind has, so many people think that wind is early and people are not adopting it. That's not the case. Wind has a very early history before 2017 itself. 2010 to 2017 was one of the best days for wind turbine makers, including Suzlon. So Suzlon IPO came somewhere, I think 2015 or 16. During that time, it has come. And even Reliance Energy IPO had come. So those were the time where power companies were getting very high multiples in 2015, 16, 17 and all. Because 2017, the wind installation were all-time high. Because there was a regulatory support given to wind, and wind was not just a power financing tool. It was used as a power tool. It was not a power tool. It was a financial product because it was customized by regulators in such a way to kind of propagate this technology that it was more like a tax saving product. So it was sold to HNI investors, including, if I name a few, then Ashwarya Rai had invested into many wind farms in 2015, 16. Those were supplied by Suzlon back then. So it was basically these projects were given an accelerated depreciation. So if you understand depreciation, it is a notional weakening of asset. So every year an asset gets depreciated by 5%, 10%, depending on the economic life of the asset. But here, what government said that it is accelerated depreciation. It's by written down value method, which means, and the rate was 80%. So if I'm investing 100 crore plant or 100 rupees plant in wind in 2015, I'm talking about. So next year I can claim 80 rupees was depreciated. So what does this mean? That 100 rupees may say I am left with 20 rupees on my balance sheet and 80 rupees has gone as a OPEX, not OPEX, but as an expense. It has been expensed out from my P&L. So what happened that whatever profit I'm making, I don't need to pay taxes on it because on paper, I'm not making any profit, but on cash flow basis, I'm making profit. So this helped many investor, HNI investor to save taxes. So if I invest 100 crore, I am saving 80 crore in year one from tax outgo. So what can be more wonderful than this for a person with more than 25, 50 crore of net worth? So even many big shots like Ajay Devgan also invested into solar later on. Solar may the accelerated depreciation was lower, but still it was trying to give that flavor. But wind was the success story back then, and so for solar there was a many hem and how in structurings, but wind was a very well structured financial product. So that's why wind has seen its heydays, and Suzlon has seen it peak, and that's why the prices of Suzlon, what you see in the past, is actually not a glorified, it is a glorified number, but at that time, Suzlon had a different outlook put together. Now, if we come back to 2018, it drastic. What happened in 2018 that this they started to think the accelerated depreciation was tapering off. They said no, no more 80% accelerated depreciation. You can live with 25% accelerated depreciation. They were at par with solar, so people thought that solar is better than wind. So people moved to solar, and you can see solar started going up, installation going up, and also competitive bidding was introduced. So it was not that only Suzlon will or only one two player will kind of give turbines. So competitive bidding means reverse bidding, which is that whoever will quote the lowest tariff, lowest rate of power, that will win. So in that regime, the wind was not picked up because wind has a higher capex. It was costlier than turbine than solar to begin with. So capex and the PLF wise, wind has better PLF, but 25% kind of 25% PLF, but solar was slightly solar cost curve were flattening. Solar panel prices were crashing like anything from 2017 onwards. So the solar storage took off and wind storage tapered down. But 2024, if you see, the trend has changed. In 2024, the YOY growth was 50% around for last 2 years, and next year also we are expected to get a 6 gigawatt addition in FY26, and we are right now at 4 gigawatts. So 50% state jump. So this 50% growth has come because there was certain regulatory changes that happened in wind. That's why the support has come. So this reverse bidding has been taken away, and that's why this thing has took off. So this is the story of wind and solar put together, with I think is very good for context setting. And with that understanding, let's go to the other part of it. That if we zoom into solar installation trend, then FY22 we were setting up. So there are color codes like in dark yellow is utility scale solar, and then something rooftop is light milder yellow, and the off white is off grid. So rooftop is something which has been initiated by even then Prime Minister, but it was very slow takeoff, and PM has taken this on his shoulder after this during this election time 2024 election. He kind of given a very good outlook for this rooftop Pradhan Mantri, that Urja Data and all those things schemes will come. So you can see that installation has grown in FY24 to FY25 from around barely a very small amount to a sizable amount. So around 4 gigawatt is added into rooftop alone. No, yeah, it is more than 4. It's a kind of 5 gigawatt has come from rooftop, which was minuscule 5 years back. So rooftop is catching up. Utility scale solar means the solar which is getting supplied to utilities. Utilities like Tata Power or Jaipur Vidyut Nigam or Bihar distribution company Discom, and all those Discoms are utility. So they are the ultimate buyer of this power. So this is rising up from. So overall, the pie has grown from 14 to 24 gigawatt in installation has grown to that. So which is meaningful. And in wind, you can see the till FY25, this line has almost become 4x. So 1.1 gigawatt to 4.2 gigawatt, and industry is gearing up for greener days into wind. And solar, you can see that it has kind of doubled, and but wind has kind of done 4x into last 4 years. This hybrid is the future because of the grid outage, which was very real in Spain. It has been highlighted in the world media, and also in India itself, the planners were thinking ahead that when you put lots of renewable energy, which is totally intermittent and you cannot predict, then the grid has to be robust and it has to be interconnected very closely. So currently in India, we have 5 regional grids, and we call it national grid, but there are east, west, north, south, and there is a northeast or something. So there are 5 grids, and their interstate connection pay, they started planning, no, we should integrate the grid so that this the stability remains there. So because the onset of not just renewable power of different variety, also the advent of EV is going to take a toll on this energy infrastructure, which is grid. So EV would spike up the energy demand in one corner. Let's say I'm charging 100 EVs started getting pulling out from, let's say, Delhi NCR, and they are running on a fast charger, then the voltage drawdown and all those things will take on a very difficult pressure on the grid. So this thing was understood by planners, and they thought that for that there is spikes into demand also. So we need, and a spike in supply also. So we need to balance both, and that's why during daytime you have good solar energy, and night time is slightly better for wind. During evening time, actually evening onwards, it's better for wind. So that's a day profile wise, and also if seasonal wise we talk about, then all the rainy days when solar is kind of off, it's zero PLF during June, July, August till August, September. So that time the wind is operating. So wind has a different cycle. But put together, H2 is better for any renewable energy, just giving a financing flavor to this electricity land map. So H2 generally is better because for wind as well as solar. Because September ends and monsoon ends, so solar has a very good solar radiation comes during winters. I mean, we expect that sunny days are good, but sunny days are very limited in India during March, May, June, and all. But best time is basically during winters when you get a very clear sky and clear sunlight, and that time very good PLFs are achieved. So H2 is better for wind as well as solar. Let's understand that the growth rates are very high, 50% plus in solar, and wind also has grown 30% year on year, but expectation is 50% next year.
अगर आप मेरे चैनल को रेगुलरली फॉलो करते हैं और चाहते हैं कि आपको सिर्फ सरफेस लेवल इंफॉर्मेशन नहीं बल्कि डीप एक्शनेबल इंसाइट मिले, तो आज का ये वीडियो आपके लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होने वाला है, बिकॉज आज मैं आपको एक्सप्लेन करने वाला हूं साधन चैनल मेंबरशिप क्या है, इसमें आपको क्या क्या मिलेगा और कौन सा प्लान किसके लिए बेस्ट है। आप इस वीडियो को अंत तक देखें, क्योंकि एंड में मैं आपको क्लियर कंपैरिजन भी दूंगा। YouTube पर जो मैं कंटेंट डालता हूं वो सबके लिए होता है, लेकिन मार्केट में रियलिस्ट तब बनता है जब आपके पास एक्सेस हो डीप एनालिसिस की, एक्शनेबल इंसाइट आपको मिलने चाहिए, और अगर आइडियाज आपके पास अर्ली स्टेज में मिल जाते हैं, दैट्स द रेसिपी फॉर सक्सेस। एंड मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंटली डायरेक्ट इंटरेक्शन इज ऑल्सो इंपॉर्टेंट। सो इस गैप को फिल करने के लिए हमने लॉन्च किया है साधन चैनल मेंबरशिप। हमने मेंबरशिप को 3 अलग अलग लेवल में डिवाइड किया हुआ है, साधन प्रो, साधन प्राइम एंड साधन प्राइम प्लस। अब मैं आपको एक एक के बारे में डिटेल में समझाता हूं। प्लान 1 इज साधन प्रो, 599 रुपीज अ मंथ, बेसिक लेकिन पावरफुल प्लान है ये साधन प्रो। इसमें आपको क्या मिलेगा? पहला, एक मेंबर ओनली वीडियो हर महीने जो कि डीप डाइव कंटेंट होगा, जो मेन चैनल पर शेयर नहीं किया जाएगा। ऑल्सो यू विल गेट प्रायोरिटी रिप्लाई टू कमेंट्स। फिर आप देख पाएंगे साधन की लाइब्रेरी, जिसपे आपके लिए 5 से ज्यादा वीडियो एक्सक्लूसिवली मेंबर्स ओनली वीडियो मिलेंगे, जो कभी कभी 10 भी हो जाते हैं। साथ ही साथ 5 डीप डाइव वीडियो का एक्सेस आपको मिलेगा। इन दिस मेंबरशिप यू विल गेट 5+ साधन इनसाइट विच विल बी एक्शन ओरिएंटेड एंड स्पेशली क्यूरेटेड बाय मी। मतलब अगर आप शुरुआत कर रहे हैं और क्वालिटी इनसाइट चाहते हैं तो ये प्लान आपके लिए बेस्ट एंट्री पॉइंट है। अब आते हैं अगले लेवल पे, साधन प्राइम, जिसमें प्रो से ज्यादा बेनिफिट मिलते हैं। एक मेंबर्स ओनली वीडियो हर महीने, प्रायोरिटी रिप्लाई प्लस बैच। लेकिन अपग्रेड क्या है? अपग्रेड है साधन लाइब्रेरी, जो 15+ वीडियो का होगा, और ज्यादा डीप रिसर्च कंटेंट, 10+ साधन इनसाइट, ज्यादा एक्शनेबल आइडियाज आपको मिलते हैं इसमें, क्योंकि यू विल गेट मंथली मेंबर्स ओनली लाइव स्ट्रीम, जिसमें यू कैन आस्क मी एनीथिंग, यू कैन यूटिलाइज दिस टाइम टू आस्क मी क्वेश्चंस व्हिच माइट बी रिलेटेड टू सेक्टर्स, बिजनेसेस, और क्या मेरे दिमाग में चल रहा है, यू कैन आस्क मी डायरेक्टली इन दीज फोरम्स। इसका मतलब है कि आप सिर्फ कंटेंट कंज्यूम नहीं कर रहे हैं, बल्कि डायरेक्टली इंटरैक्ट भी कर सकते हैं। मेंबर्स को कमेंट्स का फास्ट रिप्लाई मिलेगा। अगर आप सीरियस इन्वेस्टर हो तो ये प्लान आपके लिए है। प्लान 3, साधन प्राइम प्लस। अब आते हैं प्रीमियम प्लान पर। यहां आपको मिलता है कंप्लीट इकोसिस्टम, 2 मेंबर्स ओनली वीडियो हर महीने, डिटेल डीप डाइव होगा, और यू विल गेट अर्ली एक्सेस टू सर्टेन वीडियोस। YouTube पर आने के पहले आपको कंटेंट मिल जाएगा। You will get a super priority reply plus badge. You will get access to साधन वॉच लिस्ट, जहां पे हम 1 या 2 हाई पोटेंशियल बिजनेसेस जो हमारे दिमाग में अभी चल रहा है, जिस पे हम रिसर्च कर रहे हैं, वो वहां पे शेयर करते हैं, which will involve our thesis. And also we'll get the full access to साधन library, which would be 20-25+ videos. इस लेवल पे you will unlock 10+ साधन insight, 1 monthly live stream, एंड बेसिकली ये प्लान उन लोगों के लिए है जो मार्केट को सीरियसली लेना चाहते हैं। आपको यहाँ सिर्फ नॉलेज नहीं बल्कि डिसीजन मेकिंग एज मिलती है। तो ये
So now let's come to the main topic of today. So this was the background on the generation side. Let's move to the transmission part, which is basically the transmission of from power generation to demand center. Demand center, I mean the not exactly demand center, but the demand hub where it can be given to a guy who will distribute it. So it's just like a wholesale to distribute dealer model. So if Lux was made into, let's say, into HP, some plant into Baddi, then it moved to, let's say, Chandigarh, which is a kind of a wholesaler is sitting there. He will distribute it to retailers in and around Chandigarh and Punjab. So that's how this is similar way the generation, the power was built, let's say, into NTPC, some location, let's say into Kahalgaon, into Bihar. Then it moved to the main power center where power demand is there, let's say to Patna or to Jharkhand, where they have done a tie-up with for supplying this. And there, this Jharkhand guy will take control of Jharkhand distribution companies will take care of distributing it to nearby area. But it will no more be the baby of NTPC. The moment the power moves from NTPC power plant to through wires to let's say Bokaro. So during from let's say NTPC Kahalgaon to Bokaro, there has to be a direct line connection, and that is transmission line for you, which is there in the screen. So these, I'm sure you would have seen these lines in when you go out of your towns, then you will see that. So, but why we are focusing on transmission? And there's a very simple maths which I explained yesterday in a Twitter Spaces also, that when, as I already given you a background, that effectively our power is currently, even though the capacity mix is 55 to 45 thermal to renewable, but actually it is de facto 70, more than 75% thermal to 25-30 odd percent of non-thermal because of the PLF angle. So when government is planning ahead, because GDP growth and power demand growth are linearly correlated, so and we are on a growing GDP, so planners has to see that how much of it would come from thermal and how much would come from renewable. Government have given a very glorious renewable energy set out, that 500 gigawatt, which is huge, because what we have seen currently, overall supply is of 500 gigawatt. So whatever we have done so far put together as a country, another 500 of fresh renewable energy has to come. So it's like we are going to double our capacity in next 5 years by 2030 or 32. So for that, a transmission capex is not linear. Like for doubling, generally for doubling your infrastructure, if you are going from 1x to 2x, you need 3x of transmission. Actually 4x. You need 3x growth into transmission, because the PLF, because we are installing 500 gigawatts, so we have to invest 3 times more because they have low PLF. And in order to match to the demand, we need to invest into this 3x of the transmission capacity, because 100 megawatt of solar is not equivalent to 100 megawatt of thermal. So actually it is you need 3 into 100 megawatt of solar to for 100 megawatt of thermal to replace it. So 3x capacity is also needed. So 3x capacity into transmission is needed. So that's why this transmission become the central piece of the puzzle called power sector, because other everywhere else the growth are linear, even though these are high growth, but the transmission will be 3x of that. That is at the base planning level, although execution will take its own course. So it may not grow at 3x, but it has to grow at 2x at least to survive, to catch up with the generation. And I would like to highlight one thing why I think it is not just a ball, it's not the back of envelope thesis. There are huge money involved into it, because if as I said in the background itself, that solar and wind, these this sector has grown not because some new thermal entity and new power company like NTPC was created. No, we stopped creating NTPCs long back. We do, as a government, don't have that much of financial muscle to set out companies to do renewable energy. So what they did, they opened it up for private investors, private equities, like Actis of the world who have based into USA or UK. So UK, European, and USA based investor flocked in Bombay and Delhi and created independent power producers (IPP). So they were basically private equity has provided 25% equity and 75% of debt was borrowed from PFC, REC, IRIDA, and SBI and L&T Infra. These 4-5 guys were the main lenders during 2015 to 2025 yet. So these 4-5 lenders have supported, and even though supported by Bank of Baroda also and Bank of India and other the big PSUs were also quite instrumental. So with that mix, if you are setting up a project, so you have a Bank of Baroda loan of 75 crore and 25 crore of equity, which has come from, let's say, Singapore. So the Singapore investor will look at the financial model, and in the model, the sensitivity of time is very high. If you might have heard of the concept called time value of money. So this time value of money, if you really want to experience, you have to put the numbers into Excel and just delay the project cash flow by 1 year or 6 months, and your IRR, which are internal rate of return, they go berserk. They from 15% it will drastically come down to 13% by a 1 year delay, because lots of money has been put in upfront, and if you are delaying it by even a 6 month, so your model will go for a toss. You assume that you have lost money. Investor will mentally will write it off. I mean, they are expecting 14%, but they realize 12% if there is a 6 month delay. So that these investors are very sensitive to the timely execution of the project. So what happened? These investors, they said that I will hire a CEO, CFO, everybody in Delhi, Bombay, and I will take care of execution. But generation ke liye, they might procure everything from, let's say, Suzlon or from Wari. They bought the panel. Everything is done on time. But what happens if government could not play their bit of supplying the power from your place to a demand center? Then if even though you install the wind turbine and for 6 months you didn't get the transmission line ready, then you lost money in IRR terms. Your IRR reduces to 12% from 14%. So you will not come again. So government knows that. So that's why transmission pay, there is lots of focus that first let's sort out the transmission, because transmission is a kind of a central government purview. So they are taking care of transmission on a special mention. And generation is largely driven by non-government entities like IPP, as I said, Tata Power and JSW Energies of the world, Adani's of the world. So even though if you bring in like Tata Power and Adani's and JSW's of the world, which are three biggest conglomerate present, so their IRR goes through the same calculation. So they will also put pressure on government that, sir, we have built up the power, we are ready to generate, but nobody is there to take this power off from my shoulder. So so that's why they can push this transmission. They are pushing this transmission at the mainstream thing, and for financing, for support and everything. So the government will not withdraw from transmission because of the financial reason I mentioned, and all the good conglomerates money is involved, private money is involved. So government will not touch it in a bad way. So that's the safety in transmission, and that's why I thought that anybody who is doing well into transmission, he will get his payment on time. And if he receives cash flow, then as an investor, I will receive the stock appreciation. So that's why we chose transmission over generation and distribution. So once we zeroed into transmission, then we need to understand the industry structure. So this structure is basically zooming in into transmission sector. So transmission, as I said, power grid is the all in all of this sector in a way, because power grid controls 50% of the transmission. So there are 4 categories into this. One is the CEA, which is the nodal agency, which is the regulator, which controls the documents and the policies and everything. And these are government of India entity. Power grid is also more than 50-60% government entity. It's listed. Then 50% is controlled by power grid, but this is a category in asset owners. So they own the asset. So government directly don't own any asset. Initially, they used to own, before 1990, they used to own everything. Power grid was owning national assets, and state assets were owned by state agencies, state discoms. But what they did is something called TBCB. It's a tariff-based competitive bidding. So this was introduced in 2011 or so, because I had 2010 onwards, because I have myself have funded one project of SL GE Group. So this others may it will die somewhere. So TBCB was a game changer for transmission sector, because where they said that not just power grid, now anybody like Adani, Sterlite, or anybody like ZSL Group or GMR, any or Tata Power, they can also get into transmission, and they would be owner. So they are asset owner. Initially, Tata Power was just making power generation company, but they moved to transmission as asset owner. So asset owner are basically utilities. They are usually called as utilities, power utilities. Power utilities have power generation capability, power distribution capability, as well as power transmission capability. So these are utilities first level. If you go to the second level, so utilities cannot function of its own. Uh, so they need a support from EPC, the engineering, procurement, and control guys. And these guys are all the big names like BHEL, as I said, is crucial for transmission. Also, BHEL, KEC, Kalpataru. These are the three big names which has ruled the roost for long period of time, and Hitachi and Siemens and GE. So these 5, 6 are very big names. They are they are much bigger than other names. And CG Power also was there. But if we talk about top 5 names into this game, Hitachi, Siemens, GE, and BHEL, and Kalpataru and KEC. BHEL is not main into transmission; they are more into generation. So Kalpataru, KEC, and these three guys, these three MNCs, these are the force to reckon with in this segment. Then CG Power is there. Then KEC, this Techno Electric is a very good company into this segment. Skipper is there. We'll cover on a case study in one of them. Then Bajaj has a unit called Basel. Then Transrail is a newly listed IPO, which is one of our case studies today. So this is the plate where EPC or direct procurement route gets there. Then there are actually sometimes money is not just made on EPC level. EPC is slightly a tricky piece to solve, but the safer part is actually the manufacturer and transformer company. But I will cover that there is a nuance involved into it. But isme you will see that there are companies like Hitachi, Siemens, and GE. Again, these three are high margin player. They make the best of the class transformer. Then CG Power is India's best. I mean, non-MNCs, CG Power is the best quality in terms of transformer quality. Then there are other companies like Trill, we can say, Bharat Bijli, Trill, I can put at par with. So these two are there after this, and Voltamp. Voltamp is not very efficient, but Voltamp is a bigger player. So these are bigger players. Then others are Silchar and Silchar, Danish, Indotech. They are smaller player, Marsons, and even Supreme Power is a regional player, Tamil Nadu based player. So these are the names which are there, and most of them are listed. So, and then we go down into component. So these suppliers of this transformer making. So transformer is a complex instrument, and transmission lines itself are complicated instrument, uh, because what happens that transmission lines are not just poles which you see. They are supported by some instrument which controls the voltage flow, because this power is a raw power moving through them. Very high voltage power goes. So you need to keep a protective layer. So there are many instruments which goes into protection of those transmission lines. There are inductors, there are reactors. Uh, Sometimes there are rectifiers in some parts also. So there are many different electrical units gets involved into it, apart from the conductor and cables which you see in the distribution channel. So when we are talking about transmission, then we are actually talking about conductors. We are not talking about cables. So there's a minute difference. Conductors are basically the naked wires. So they carry the high voltage, extra high voltage or high voltage 200 kV, 220 kV kind of load from A to B. But a cable company like Polycab and all those, they are making a household cable. So they are not infrastructure beneficiaries, so to say. They are more a proxy on a real estate growth, because in real estate in house it's a household thing. So Bajaj Electrical and all KEI and all those are make cables, which are we are not going to cover today because they are not part of the transmission value chain. Then in conductor, you are seeing already names like Paramount Cable is into that. Phenolics makes some bit of cable, but pure play conductor are being made by APAR. RR Cable also does a wholesale kind of the job. So APAR is main, and the main name is actually not mentioned here. Is a Sterlite. So Sterlite and APAR controls the 30% of market share into this. Then Sterlite is not listed. Then RR Cable is comes, and then everybody Advait Energy, which they also make OPGW cable, which and Polycab and everybody else is into cable, not into conductor. So conductor, which are the main thrust today, are APAR and Sterlite and a bit of Advait Energy and our cable. I'm not very sure, but they do a kind of B2B job, so they might be making it. Then let's understand it from a TAM perspective, the total addressable market. So this is a very important slide. So in 1 year, this amount has grown from 6 lakh crore to 9 lakh crore. So you can understand that how things are moving very fast. So that is the realm we are looking at when we look at power sector nowadays. So that's why I'm saying that this whatever you are going to understand today, it will work out for you for next 5-7 years. So please pay attention to what we are talking here, because things are very fast changing, and to the on a positive note, things are moving out. So in this power T&D capex, this 9 lakh crore, how this number is coming? So actually, this number is coming from largely from Power Grid. So Power Grid said that I think 1 year back they had said they will invest 3 lakh crore. I think now they are saying that they will invest 4.5 lakh crore. So उन्होंने 3 to 4.5 किया, और फिर rest of the folks has to bring in, because Power Grid is 50%, so you can just double it. So 9 lakh crore is the total capex, power T&D capex. Half of it will be controlled by Power Grid, more than half of it. So if we distribute this 9 lakh crore, so let's go down to the material level, that what actually means it for different players, different sub segments. So first of all, when you are big, transmission is not possible without transmission lines. So transmission lines consume 30 to 35% of this capex, so which amounts to more than 3 lakh crore. Then the crucial part is substation. So substation has transformers inbuilt into it and other protective units, which I said are rectifier, inductors, and reactors and likes of that. And there are STATCOMs and there are VSCs, and there are many things. And there is another thing which is called HVDC. It is separately given for a financing region. It is not separate from substation, so to say. It is a kind of substation, but a specialized substation. So if electrical engineer would make this PPT, he would merge both of them. But since it has a different financing implication, so HVDC is categorized as a 15% of total 9 lakh crore capex. Why 15%? Because that one one HVDC project minimum cost 10,000 crores, and there are 10 such lined up already. So by to be done by 2032. So next 5-7 years capex is at least 1 lakh crore or 1.4 lakh crore. So if you take that 9 lakh crore into 15%, you will get the same number. So HVDC is going to be there. So let's understand what is HVDC. So their DC is direct current, AC is alternative current. AC is what you see in your household is AC. Everything, rest of 95% of the electrical world operates on AC only. So you would rarely find DC. DC you will find into your batteries, small batteries, like your remote batteries and all are DC. So DC is direct current. So something which is non-controllable, because the whole world operates at AC, because AC is what we use. So, but DC is very efficient for long range transmission. So a transmission guy would appreciate HVDC, not a generation guy, not a distribution guy. They would say, what is this HVDC? What's so special? But a transmission company, if you ask them, they'll say this is the core and it's going to be the most important thing in next 5 years. So they are the, so what it means that if you have to transmit power beyond 150 or 200 kilometers, so the break even point of HVDC is at least 150-200 kilometer. Uske baad HVDC will give you a huge saving in terms of energy saving, because when you transmit from point A to point B, and then lots of this power gets lost into thermal energy. So even if you see that if your laptops are working for half an hour, then it start heating up. So likewise, these transmission wires also heats up a lot, and AC heats up a lot more. So AC, but AC is useful and it's low cost and is technology wise is simpler to understand. So AC transmission is more popular, but DC transmission is where the buck is more going to be, because on a higher kilometer, if you have to move power, then you need HVDC. And just to give you, if you might ask me why all of a sudden we are talking of HVDC, why not before and what changed? So what has changed is that there has come a state policies, state renewable policy. For example, Gujarat state renewable solar policy was there in 2012. Even many states have followed suit, and Gujarat, Maharashtra, everybody has a solar policy. Everybody has a kind of wind policy. UP now has a EV policies. So they all are doing a bit of investment into making policy favorable for private money to come, because private money will come and they will create jobs. So Rajasthan and Gujarat are ahead because of naturally endowed sunlight and wind, and even Tamil Nadu and Karnataka are very well placed in terms of that. So these 4 5 states are generating lots of renewable energy, but the power consumption wise, they are not great power centers like Chennai being one, but rest of the whole state produces a lot more power than what Chennai and whole state can themselves consume. So they are transmitting to a longer distance now. So now they might have to supply to Bangalore from Tamil Nadu. So this it crosses 200 kilometers easily. So in that scenario, HVDC's role has become important. Is before that the state was managing its transmission. State, it was everything was under state, but now the interstate thing came out. So and that the policy came. So TBCB came, and there was a DBCB came for promoting that interstate transmission to a better formal way. So in ISTS is called interstate transmission. Now the states have a algorithm through which they can talk to. So as I said, that if you are producing something into Himachal and sending it to Delhi, then there are laws how it would be governed and how the sharing of charges would happen. So this was done through TBCB mechanism under ISTS. So ISTS was done. So ISTS has paved way for HVDC now, because it is like you learned doing a state if you are a bowler and you are putting a full length ball or good length ball, now you will try to attempt a Yorker, but you can't attempt Yorker on day one as a bowler. So HVDC is like that Yorker ball, which you need to practice a lot, and it is a lethal ball. So likewise, it is very, what to say, technically superior product than a typical substation. So HVDC requires a special skill set to make those kind of transformer, and only 3 companies globally also not more than 4 5 companies does it. So 3 companies which are operating the main player being Hitachi Energy, second one being Siemens, and third one is GE Vernova. So all these 3 are there, and it was supported by some Indian companies. But HVDC is there where the whole buck is going to be, and they will make huge margins out of it. Then the 20% is others, which is the rest of the balance of thing. And if you dig down into the transmission line, then there are 50% up to 50% gets into tower. So 50% tower means the companies which make tower. So tower, maybe there are 2 types of towers. One is generally 2 types. There are multiple types, but one is the tubular structure, which you see generally, which you see in anywhere in India. But if you go to Noida, or if you go to, let's say, to Ahmedabad and in the main cities, you will see that there are a tall structure which are like monopoles, which we call them. There is one structure. It's not tubular. There are not many 3 4 legs are not there. So it look like a one guy with 4 hands standing. So that is monopole. And these are why monopole has to come into places like Noida and cities like Bangalore, because there are dearth of space, and transmission tower takes a lot of space. I mean, not lots of, but yes, it takes good enough of space, and space is getting costlier. So and you cannot use that land. So that's why this monopole, they just how much they will just use 2-3 square meter, and then you will create a monopole above it. So that's why, because of land costs are going up, the technology has to evolve to catch up. That's why towers have monopole as a flavor, which will continue for future. So it's a futuristic, and presently its adoption curve are fast in monopole, and tubular structure is there. If you have to set up the transmission tower between, let's say, Chandigarh to Solan, then you will use tubular structure. So tubular structure is a major make, and I am sure it would be 80-90% of the whole pie amongst the tower structure. Then 30-35% comes from conductor cables, as I said already. Others constitute 20%. Let's come to substation, where 45 to 50% cost is transformer. And in substation, if I'm and that is valid for HVDC also, because HVDC is a kind of substation. So in HVDC, why Hitachi will roost, or ABB will roost? Because ABB Hitachi is merged. So ABB has the unique ability to build up those transformers. So they will charge huge margins. Any which way, if we remove the HVDC from the game, then generally substation, which are lower voltage also, their transformer are the main cost out of 50% of the cost. So what does this mean to us overall in the pie? If you look down, then you will see that 9 lakh crore, say 2.7 to 3 lakh crore goes into transmission lines. Tower capex becomes around 1.2 to 1.6 crore for next 5-7 years, 5 years. So TAM for per annum is 20,000 crore, and beneficiaries would be KEC, Kalpataru, Skipper, Transrail, and Jyoti Structure. So initially 5 year down, 10 years back, there was just 3 players, KEC, Kalpataru, and Jyoti Structure. Later on, Skipper came in, and Transrail has also joined in. So Transrail actually acquired Gammon India. So Gammon India used to be there. So these 3, main players were Jyoti, Kalpataru, KEC, and Gammon and all. So now there is Basel into it. Basel is also doing monopoles. Skipper is also doing monopoles. Jyoti is also doing monopoles. So these are the players who are making towers. In conductor, as I said, Apar is there, Advait is there, and cables player are there. So their market opportunity 12,500 crore from transmission and distribution side. So we are not including that household का cable में कितना लग रहा है. That is separate matter, which you will find in Polycab investor presentation. So this is just the transmission related conductor sides. And other players being EPC companies like Transrail, Jyoti and all. In substation, the main players like Siemens, the capex is 20,000, the TAM is 20,000 per year crore. And the player are Siemens, GE, Vernova, Hitachi. CG Power also makes good transformers. And Trill and BHEL are there. Then others have 22,000 crore. Wahan pe bhi there Siemens, Hitachi, CG Power, and Schneider Electric also there. Schneider does a bit of transformer also, but they are also into distribution transformer, which doesn't go into this transmission, but they have both the products. So half of it goes to transmission, half of it goes to distribution. So they have also a presence into transmission value chain, and they also make very good transformer quality wise. So if we have to put a name ABB, Hitachi, Siemens, then fourth name has to be Schneider from a technical superiority point of view, because ultimately why it is critical, that why I'm taking these 3-4 names, because they control the arc, the power, the spark, basically when you change the gear from high voltage to slightly lower voltage or slightly higher voltage, then the sparks come. So that spark has to be controlled in a substation. So that is a domain of good technical hands like Schneider and all. In HVDC, there are, as I said, there are Siemens, Hitachi, and GE are there. BHEL also makes, but these BHEL in quality power makes a part of HVDC. They cannot alone make HVDC plant without Hitachi and Siemens. So they are component supplier to HVDC value chain, quality and BHEL. So this HVDC is 26,000 crore TAM per year, because they themselves have 1.35 lakh crore as a total TAM for 5 years. So 26,000 crore. So highest TAM you'll see is HVDC, then followed by others EPC component, but largely then 20,000 crore, 22,000 into substation, So this is the plate. So on the second last slide on the industry structure is, as I said, ISTS is interstate transmission system. ISTS transmission charges also. So when you transmit power from Delhi to, let's say, Haryana or vice versa, then the state in the infrastructure has to be there, which is common between them. So there you have to pay ISTS transmission charges. So the sharing and everything will be determined between these two guys, and there is a law behind it. But for there is a carve out given to all the green energy technology. So we are in July 2025 right now, and here here yellow line, this orange line is BESSN, and this pumped hydro station. So I'll tell you BES what is BESS is before I introduce other things. So BESS is battery energy storage system, which is basically there has to be a grid stability. So grid stability is enhanced by putting hybrid structure, hybrid power, and also it can further enhance by putting battery in place. So what battery will do, it will store the surplus power rather than giving it to grid. So it will store the power from the time of generation till when the demand comes. So they will park for 2 hours, generally 2 hours power capability. So let's say 100 megawatt power I'm producing through solar or through solar plus wind also. So hybrid. So I will have a 2 hour of backup of battery. So out of 24 hours, effectively I'll be producing 10, 12 hours only, but I will store that for 2 hours. And then that 2 hours storage will be used for when the demands peak out. So that's how what I'm doing. I'm reducing the grid load through batteries. So BESS is a thing which is there, which is going to be there. As the graph suggests, you can see they have got 100% ISTS transmission charges waiver. So this is left hand side, you can see, and this is valid till July 2028. So this is till June 2028 they are valid. So they don't have to pay 100 any ISTS charges, and ISTS charges are typically 1 to 2 rupees. So if a PPA is typically signed for solar for, let's say, 3 rupees, 4 rupees, then 1 to 2 rupees is the additional cost above which is waived off. So in equation, if you don't have to, so out of 4 rupees as a IPP, if I'm getting from my solar 4 rupees a unit, actually, ideally, I should pay 1 to 2 rupees to the guy whom I'm sending it to, if I'm sending it to other country, other state. But I, as a solar guy, right now, I don't have to give, because solar ka bhi aap dekh lo, solar is till June 30th, June 2025, it is 100%. But this is a slight slope. It is going to be 75%, then 50%, then 25%. By July 28, it would be at par with thermal power plant. So 30th June 2028 is the date through which the preferential treatment for solar will end. And iske pehle, this was a 100% subsidy. So I have witnessed 10 years when ISTS charges were zero. Now I'm seeing when this charges are going to be going up to 100%, from 100 to 0 as a waiver. So with 0 to 100, they are moving as a charge billable to the IPP, to the guy who is selling the power. So this will have economic impact and a kind of a signaling which will not be favorable for green energy, so to say. But now government thinks that solar and wind and hydro have kind of matured. So those three big brothers are put in one bracket where their waiver are going to be waived off. So waiver will be repealed. So that's the new paradigm. We'll see how it impact, but I think it's not favorable for these three big sectors, subsectors. But BESS has a 3-year carve out, and the green hydrogen is also a bigger carve out till 2030. So from 2030 onwards, 2034, it will come down from 100 to 0. Again, offshore wind, which is further 2 year down. So it will be, so it looks like government has an agenda of giving 7-8 years of free runway till they become sustainable, and then this charges would apply. So what are the trends? If we just look at the numbers, so as we speak, we have around 220 gigawatt of renewable power in the mix. So out of which 48% is solar. So roughly 100 odd, more than 100 gigawatt is solar. This is the installation trend. So this is 220 gigawatt installed capacity, out of which 50% is solar, around 50%. Then 23% is wind. large hydro is 22%, small hydro is barely 2%, and this biopower and all this, which is other items. So out of 220 megawatt installation is total installation so far, solar continued to be the major contributor with 48%, followed by wind and this. About 105 gigawatt of solar and 50 gigawatt of wind capacities are there. So overall, countrywide, we have 100 gigawatt of solar, 50 of wind, and pipeline of combined capacity of solar, wind, and hybrid projects are around 143 gigawatt. So this is 220, and another 143 is a pipeline. So if we look at right hand side, that then commissioned is 105 solar, 50 wind, and pipeline may there are 70 solar, 18 gigawatt into wind is in pipeline, and 50 megawatt into hybrid. So as we highlighted before, that hybrid is the new growth area. So hybrid is basically solar plus wind. So there's an additional layer where wind will go up. So solar will also go up. So both of them is like 1+1 and another half for them, and the rest of it is pumped hydro, which is far in future. Another 66 gigawatt are under bidding phase. So there is 3 stages. One is pipeline, which is already bid out, and who is making is established, who will buy is established. But under bidding stage is also good amount is there, so which is around 66 gigawatt. So if we look at closely, then approximately 29 megawatt is capacity addition of tender. This makes 56% increase from 18.4 gigawatt. So the tender stage, the under bidding stage has grown by 56%. So this renewable energy is still growing at 56%. And I'm looking at future because this is under bidding, which will come next year in pipeline, or maybe so that is growing. So that's why we are bullish on this sector put together, because the growth rate are 56% and all. So this capacity of increase will be crucial for India to reach this goal of 500 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2030. But it requires 50 gigawatt addition each year till 2030. So that's all.